She was left with nothing until this happened. Her revenge will shock you. What if I told you that the woman sitting on this empty floor with nothing but a suitcase and $23 in her pocket would become worth $15 million in just 18 months? What if I revealed that her own family had stolen everything from her, her inheritance, her business, even her children's college funds, leaving her to start over at 45 years old? But here's the part that will give you chills. Her revenge wasn't violence, lawsuits, or drama. Her revenge was success so massive, so undeniable, that it forced everyone who betrayed her to watch from the sidelines as she built an empire they could never touch. This isn't just a comeback story. This is the blueprint for how rock bottom can become your foundation, how betrayal can become your fuel, and how losing everything can be the first step to gaining more than you ever imagined possible. Stay with me, because what happened next will either inspire you to rise from your own ashes or leave you wondering what you're truly capable of when you have nothing left to lose. Meet Sarah Chen, 45 years old, divorced, and standing in an empty apartment that used to be filled with a lifetime of memories. 6 months earlier, she'd been living what most people would call the perfect life. Successful family business, beautiful home, 2 kids in private school, and a marriage that looked picture perfect from the outside. But sometimes, the people closest to you are the ones planning your downfall. The betrayal came like a perfectly orchestrated symphony of destruction. Her ex-husband, her own brother, and her business partner had been secretly transferring assets, liquidating investments, and systematically removing her name from everything she had spent 20 years building. By the time Sarah discovered the conspiracy, they had legally stolen her life's work and left her with nothing but debt and devastating proof that the people she trusted most had been plotting against her for years. But here's what her betrayers didn't know, and what you're about to discover. Sometimes losing everything is the universe's way of clearing space for something extraordinary. When you have nothing left to lose, you have everything to gain. When everyone counts you out, you're free to play by entirely different rules. If you've ever felt betrayed, overlooked, or written off by people who should have supported you, this story will either break your heart or fuel your fire. Maybe both. Hit that notification bell right now, because what Sarah did next didn't just change her life, it rewrote the rules on what's possible when you refuse to stay down. The perfect storm, when everything falls apart at once. The morning Sarah's world collapsed started like any other Tuesday. She was reviewing quarterly reports for the family import business she had built from a single shipping container 20 years earlier, when her accountant called with words that would haunt her forever. "Sarah, I think you need to sit down. There's been some unusual activity on the company accounts, and I'm legally obligated to tell you that your signature has been removed from all major financial instruments." What followed was 72 hours of devastating discoveries that read like a masterclass in betrayal. Her brother Michael, who she had trusted as CFO, had been systematically transferring company assets to shell corporations for 18 months. Her husband David, the man who had promised to love and protect her, had been working with a forensic accountant to hide marital assets while building a legal case to paint her as mentally unstable and financially irresponsible. But the cruelest cut was her business partner Jennifer, her best friend since college, who had been like a sister for 25 years. Jennifer had been secretly negotiating to sell the business to their biggest competitor while simultaneously poisoning relationships with key clients and suppliers, making the business appear less valuable on paper while positioning herself as the stable leadership after Sarah's inevitable departure. The legal papers arrived on a Friday afternoon, divorce proceedings claiming she was an unfit mother, a civil lawsuit alleging financial mismanagement of the family business, and a restraining order that prevented her from accessing her own office. In 72 hours, Sarah had gone from successful entrepreneur to legally labeled liability, watching lawyers divide up a life she had spent decades building. The psychological devastation was worse than the financial loss. These weren't strangers or business competitors. These were the people who had sat at her dinner table, celebrated her successes, and sworn they had her back. The realization that your own family and closest friends could orchestrate your destruction with such calculated precision creates a unique kind of trauma that few people ever experience. That Tuesday morning, Sarah woke up as a successful business owner with a net worth of $3.2 million. By Friday evening, she was sitting in a studio apartment with $23 in cash, a maxed-out credit card, and the crushing weight of understanding that everything she thought she knew about trust, loyalty, and security had been an illusion. But sometimes, rock bottom is where you discover what you're really made of. The Phoenix decision, when survival becomes strategy. On Saturday morning, Sarah made a decision that would define the rest of her life. While most people in her situation would have spent months in therapy, years in legal battles, or decades nursing wounds, Sarah chose a different path. She decided that the best revenge wouldn't be destroying her betrayers. It would be making their betrayal irrelevant by building something so much bigger than what they had stolen that their theft would look like pocket change. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source: necessity. With no income, no assets, and legal fees mounting, Sarah had to completely reimagine how she created value. She couldn't start another import business. She had no capital, and her former partners controlled all the supplier relationships. She couldn't leverage her network. They had systematically poisoned those relationships. She had to start from absolute zero, which forced her to think in ways she never had before. Sarah realized that in 20 years of running a traditional business, she had been trading time for money in the most expensive way possible. Managing inventory, dealing with suppliers, handling logistics, and maintaining overhead that ate into profits. But her years of experience had given her something more valuable than capital. She understood international supply chains, market inefficiencies, and consumer behavior in ways that few people did. The pivot was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of importing products, Sarah would teach other people how to import products. She would create online courses, consulting services, and certification programs that turned her decades of hard-earned knowledge into scalable digital products. No inventory, no overhead, no partners who could steal from her. Just pure value creation that could be replicated infinitely. Working from her studio apartment with a borrowed laptop and $200 worth of basic recording equipment, Sarah began creating what would become the most comprehensive import-export training program ever developed. While her betrayers were fighting over the scraps of her old business, she was building something that could generate more revenue in a month than her physical business had generated in a year. The psychology was perfect. Her betrayers had stolen her business, but they couldn't steal her knowledge, her experience, or her understanding of the market. They had taken her assets, but they couldn't take her ability to create new assets. Most importantly, they had given her the greatest gift possible: complete freedom from the limitations of traditional business thinking. By month 3, Sarah's first online course had generated $50,000 in revenue. By month 6, she was on track to match her previous year's income, but this was just the beginning of something much bigger. The empire strikes back when knowledge becomes power. By month 9, Sarah's digital empire had grown beyond her wildest projections. What started as a simple online course had evolved into a comprehensive ecosystem. Advanced certification programs, one-on-one consulting services, group mastermind programs, and done-for-you import services for high-end clients. Her monthly recurring revenue had reached $180,000, and she was on track to generate more profit in her first year than her traditional business had ever produced. But the real breakthrough came when Sarah realized she wasn't just teaching people how to import products. She was teaching them how to think like global entrepreneurs. Her students weren't just learning logistics and supplier relationships. They were developing the mindset and systems that create location-independent wealth. Word spread rapidly through entrepreneurial communities, and Sarah found herself with a 6-month waiting list for her premium programs. The transformation was visible in every aspect of her life. The woman who had been legally painted as financially irresponsible was now generating consistent 6-figure months through nothing but value creation and expertise. The unfit mother was now able to spend more quality time with her children than ever before, working from anywhere in the world while building generational wealth that no court could touch and no partner could steal. The sweetest moment came when Sarah's former business partner Jennifer reached out through a mutual friend, asking if Sarah would be willing to consult for their struggling import business. The company that had been stolen from her was failing without her expertise, losing clients and hemorrhaging money, while Sarah's digital empire thrived. The irony was perfect. They had stolen her business but couldn't steal her success. Sarah's response was professional but definitive. Her consulting rate was $500 per hour with a 40-hour minimum, payment in advance, and no guarantees. The same knowledge they could have continued accessing for free, as her partner now came with a premium price tag that reflected its true value. Jennifer declined, unable to afford the consultation fees that Sarah's paying students gladly invested for the same expertise. The psychological shift was complete. Sarah had gone from victim to victor, from dependent to dominant, from someone whose worth was determined by what others gave her to someone whose worth was determined by what she created. Her betrayers had intended to destroy her, but instead they had liberated her from the limitations of traditional business and forced her to discover capabilities she never knew she possessed. Sometimes the greatest favor someone can do for you is to count you out completely. The million-dollar mindset, when success becomes inevitable. 18 months after sitting on that empty apartment floor with $23, Sarah received a phone call that crystallized just how dramatically her life had transformed. It was her divorce attorney with news that would have devastated the old Sarah, but merely amused the new one. Her ex-husband was requesting spousal support, claiming he couldn't maintain his standard of living after the divorce settlement. The irony was exquisite. While David and her brother were fighting over the diminishing assets of a traditional business model, Sarah had built something infinitely more valuable, a scalable system that generated wealth through knowledge transfer rather than physical assets. Her digital empire wasn't just more profitable, it was completely divorce-proof, lawsuit-proof, and theft-proof because it existed in her mind and reputation rather than in bank accounts that others could access. By month 20, Sarah's business had evolved into a global phenomenon. She was speaking at international conferences, her certification program was being taught in 47 countries, and her mastermind program had a waiting list of over 2,000 entrepreneurs willing to pay $25,000 for a year of access to her strategic thinking. The woman who had been betrayed by people she trusted had created a community of thousands who trusted her expertise enough to transform their own lives. The psychological transformation was even more remarkable than the financial one. Sarah had discovered that betrayal, while painful, had been her greatest teacher. It had shown her that relying on others for security was the most insecure position possible. That traditional business partnerships were often just elaborate dependency relationships, and that the only wealth you can truly count on is the wealth you create through your own knowledge and abilities. The ultimate validation came when Forbes featured Sarah's story in their second Act Success series, profiling entrepreneurs who had achieved greater success after major life disruptions. The article's headline read, "From betrayed to billionaire track, how one woman turned loss into a $15 million digital empire. The same media that had once covered her business as a family dispute was now celebrating her as a case study in resilience and reinvention. Sarah's betrayers had wanted to write the ending to her story, but instead, they had given her the prologue to something much bigger. They had taken her past, but she had used that loss to create a future beyond anything she had previously imagined possible. The woman they had tried to destroy had become unstoppable, not despite their betrayal, but because of it. Sarah's story proves that sometimes losing everything is life's way of making space for something extraordinary. Her betrayers thought they were taking her assets, but they were actually removing the limitations that had kept her thinking small. When you have nothing left to lose, you discover capabilities you never knew existed. The same crisis that destroys some people liberates others to become who they were always meant to be. The most powerful lesson isn't about business strategy or digital marketing. It's about the psychology of resilience. Sarah didn't succeed because she was stronger than other people. She succeeded because she chose to see betrayal as redirection rather than destruction. Every person who has ever achieved extraordinary success has faced a moment when everything seemed lost. The difference is what they did in that moment of absolute zero. Right now, someone watching this is in their own version of Sarah's empty apartment. Maybe it's a financial crisis, a relationship betrayal, a career setback, or a health challenge that has stripped away everything familiar. That moment isn't your ending, it's your beginning. The same force that took everything away is creating space for something bigger than you've ever imagined. Your breakdown might be your breakthrough in disguise. Sarah's betrayers are still fighting over the scraps of yesterday while she's building tomorrow. That's the ultimate revenge, making someone's betrayal irrelevant by achieving success so massive that what they took seems insignificant. The greatest comeback isn't defeating your enemies, it's making them irrelevant by playing a completely different game at a level they can't even comprehend or access. Your current circumstances don't determine your future possibilities. Your response to those circumstances does. Sarah's $15 million empire started with $23 and a decision to use betrayal as fuel instead of poison. Every limitation in your life right now is temporary unless you make it permanent by accepting it. The question isn't what happened to you. It's what you're going to do about what happened to you. If Sarah's story stirred something deep inside you, if you felt that recognition of your own untapped potential, or remembered a time when you thought everything was over, but somehow found the strength to continue, smash that like button right now, because this message needs to reach everyone who's been counted out, written off, or betrayed by people who should have supported them. Subscribe and hit that notification bell if you're ready to transform your setbacks into comebacks and learn the strategies that turn rock bottom into foundation stones. I want you to comment below and tell me about a time when losing everything led to finding something better. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to keep going, and don't you dare stop this momentum now. YouTube has perfectly curated the next video that will continue building your unstoppable mindset. That next video isn't random. It's your next step toward the life you deserve. Click it now because your transformation is just getting started.